you very much. Thank you to Alistair and to the Society for inviting me to be involved in this event this evening, and thank you to the audience for stifling your groan when you heard that you're going to have to listen to a constitutional lawyer. I promise you it won't be that bad. I have subtitled this talk A Lawyer's View, and deliberately not subtitled it The Legal View, and that's for a couple of different reasons. What I'm going to say are my views on some of the legal issues. If you put two lawyers in a room, and some of you who are our clients will know this, you'll get at least 3 opinions. So what you get tonight is mine. And the other reason that I've said this is a lawyer's view is that I think lawyers just need to be aware of their role in this process, and that role is undoubtedly going to be subordinate to the role of political discussion. So we can talk about the legal issues and the legal implications, but they will undoubtedly take second place to realpolitik. Now, what I actually want to do first is not talk about independence, but actually put the current debate in a little bit of context and talk to you about where Scotland is now, and remind you of some things that I'm sure you know already about devolution, but may not be at the forefront of your mind this evening. And you will know, of course, that Scotland is already, and has been since before and since the Union, a separate legal jurisdiction. We have a separate court system and litigation processes, and we have for 300 years or longer been distinctly different from the rest of the United Kingdom in a lot of substantive legal areas. I've mentioned property law, criminal law, now after devolution, public law and regulation, and indeed the contract law to which Steve referred. And of course, since 1999, with the advent of devolution, we've had even greater divergence from the rest of the United Kingdom in a number of key policy areas. And really the point that I just want to make about that is that Scotland does constitutional change. You might argue, in fact, that Scotland fetishises its constitutional change in the way that other countries might fetishise having a team that won the World Cup. I know which one I might prefer. And so lawyers have had to deal with a changing picture in terms of governance and government for the whole life of the Union. So that's not something that is terribly new. I don't for a moment diminish the scale of the independence debate or the scale of the change that independence would bring about, but I do say that we need to place it in the context of constitutional change over a long period. Where we are now in terms of the Scottish Parliament, this is a slide I've been using now for 10 years. A Parliament of limited competence usually gets a laugh. It's not intended to be an insult to our politicians, it's intended just to explain that what we have in Scotland is a Parliament that is limited by law in terms of the things that it can do. So we've got a Parliament that already has power. We've had increasing devolution of power since 1999. And one of the things that I did want to say this evening about the context, in the context of financial services, is that the Scotland Act 2012, which will be brought into effect if there is a no vote, will bring about significant changes in the way we deal with taxation in Scotland from about 2016-2017. So even if there is a no vote, things will not stay the same in terms of the financial picture. We will have greater changes to come in terms of taxation. And I've mentioned the Scottish rate of income tax. We've now got devolution of what was stamp duty, land and buildings transaction tax, landfill tax, and ongoing debates about whether other areas of taxation ought to be devolved to the Scottish Parliament and Scottish Government. That's alongside, of course, increased borrowing powers for the Scottish Government. So again, this debate does take place in the context of ongoing change. I wanted also just to bring some law into the discussion and remind you of the basics of the referendum process itself. You will, I hope, know already that the question you will be asked if you're a voter is, should Scotland be an independent country? That's the second attempt. The first attempt was, do you agree Scotland should be an independent country, which the Electoral Commission said, I think reasonably fairly, was a bit leading. So we will be asked, should Scotland be an independent country, and we'll be asked that on the 18th of September. You'll know that 16 and 17-year-olds are going to be able to vote in the referendum. You might know very little else about the franchise for the referendum. One of the interesting things about the franchise is that European Union nationals who live and work in Scotland will be able to vote in the referendum. They're already able to vote in Scottish Parliament elections. They can't vote in UK Parliament elections unless, and I'm sorry, I'm a pedant, I am a lawyer, unless they are citizens of the Republic of Ireland who enjoy different arrangements for historical reasons. But most EU nationals don't get to vote in UK parliamentary elections, but they will get to vote in the referendum. And you could spend days enjoying the legislation that's been passed by the Scottish Parliament to govern the conduct of that referendum, dealing with all manner of things like campaign broadcasts, spending limits, media coverage and the like. So there is a process now in place for asking the question. In terms of financial services, I suppose the two key and pretty chunky issues that you would expect everyone on the panel to deal with this evening are European Union membership and the question of currency, which Steve raised, and I'll deal with the European Union first. And it's all got very exciting over the last few days, and Steve's already mentioned the quote from Mr. Barroso, who said, "It would be difficult, if not impossible." Well, there's a legal case for you. What turns on the word if? Did he mean difficult but not impossible? Did he mean difficult and almost impossible? What meaning are we to give to the if? Well, actually, I'm not going to spend terribly much time worrying about what Mr. Barroso said. I'll talk instead about where this debate has gone since really the referendum was called. And I suppose where we started was the Scottish Government effectively putting forward a position that membership of the EU would be automatic. Now, they've departed from that position and accept that there would have to be negotiation. Equally, we've had some rather extreme, I think, views on the other side of the debate suggesting that it would be nigh on impossible for Scotland to be a member of the European Union. I don't think anyone seriously believes that Scotland could not be a member of the European Union. What is key to this is not the fact of membership per se, but the terms on which membership would be allowed and the timing of negotiations over those terms. And that's really where the debate has now gotten to. Scotland is already in the territory of the EU. European Union law applies and is already integrated into Scotland's legal system. That's something that gives us, if you like, a head start on that negotiation process. But there are serious questions around EU membership which still need to be answered. I hope you like flags. I'm not going to ask questions. But what this diagram does is it shows the status of each of the members of the European Union and which parts of the EU institutions and structures each country belongs in. You will see, obviously, the Union flag, part of the European Union, but not in the Eurozone and not in the Schengen area. And for those of you who don't know what the Schengen area is, well done. It's the reason why when you're flying back from France or other exotic European countries, everyone else gets to be in a nice departure lounge and you have to go through passport control to the really horrible one. But the real and important legal explanation of Schengen is that it's a common travel area. And the UK has an opt-out from Schengen and indeed has instead a common travel area with the Republic of Ireland. And the question is whether in negotiations Scotland could maintain an opt-out from Schengen. And without going into any great detail about that, I think that's not terribly difficult. My view is that an opt-out from Schengen is not going to be something that is going to be a great problem. The UK already enjoys it. The convenience factor for people from other countries in the Schengen area of being able to get into Scotland without going through passport control is not really as significant as the inconvenience that would be caused from establishing a border with the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland. So Schengen isn't a big deal, in my view. Budget rebates, there would be a question about the extent to which Scotland would enjoy the UK's budget rebate, and there remains a question about the euro. And the question is whether Scotland would be granted an exemption from any treaty obligation to join the euro, whether the EU and other member states would be prepared to make that kind of concession to Scotland. That may be difficult, given that entering countries, new accession countries coming into the EU have had to adopt a treaty obligation to join the euro. One option is a treaty obligation, but for Scotland to, and you'll want to write this down, do a Sweden. And what doing a Sweden means is having a treaty obligation to join the euro, but deliberately gaming the system so that the convergence criteria for actually getting into the euro are never met. Sweden has consistently ensured that its exchange rates and interest rates are outside of the parameters for joining the euro, so even though it has an obligation to join, it's never been in the position to meet the criteria that would actually allow it to enter. I do want to mention the customs union of Belarus, Kazakhstan and Russia. And in case you missed it, President Putin did say the other week in public that he couldn't rule out Scotland becoming a member of the customs union of Belarus, Kazakhstan and Russia. I feel a little bit threatened, and on currency and monetary issues, this allows me to criticise politicians on both sides and the media all at once, which I love. A newspaper that will remain nameless had a headline the other day: "An independent Scotland will not be allowed to keep pound." It's rubbish. There is no issue about Scotland using the pound. A country can't be forbidden from using a currency. A country can use any currency it wants. The issue is not about use of the currency. The issue is about control of the currency. Now, you're an educated audience, you may get that, but actually the way the debate is playing out, it's not entirely obvious to people reading the press that they won't have their banknotes confiscated if there is a yes vote. The issue is about whether or not there might be a sterling zone. And that has been the Scottish Government's preferred position from the beginning. I think where they may be criticised is in their view that it is obvious that a sterling zone would be attractive to the rest of the United Kingdom, and that it would be obvious that the rest of the United Kingdom would be willing to enter into that sterling zone. It would have to be a matter of agreement. I don't think there can be any dispute about that. Where I would criticise the Better Together campaign and in particular the UK government on this is that it is a departure from a position that was adopted earlier in the campaign, which was that the UK government declined to pre-negotiate the terms of independence, so they won't tell us what their position will be in a whole range of issues when it comes to negotiations, but in the last week have decided that collectively they're going to get together and say that there would be no currency union in the event of independence. That for me raises a whole other constitutional question about who would be doing the negotiating for each side, and I'm not convinced it would be the governments of either nation or part of the United Kingdom, but that's something we'll get into in questions. We could have unofficial use of the sterling in the way that Panama uses the dollar. We could have an independent Scottish currency, either free-floating or pegged to the pound, as the Irish currency was after independence. And there is the question about the euro. I think what we can say about the euro is that Scotland couldn't join the euro right away. In the same way that Sweden has managed to stay out of the euro, there is a lot of development that would have to be done before Scotland got to a position where it would be in a position to join the euro. So there would have to be some intermediate step. The really interesting thing, if you're a lawyer, and therefore not for anyone else in the room, is what would happen to existing contracts which are written with obligations to make payments in sterling if there was a change of Scottish currency. So what happens to a contract that says you owe me £1 if in fact the pound ceases to be the currency of Scotland and yet strangely still exists in the rest of the United Kingdom? Quite different from the situation where contracts written in French francs, for example, would automatically be treated as now being written in euros because the French franc simply ceases to be. So yes, very interesting for me. That's really a quick run-through of some of the legal issues. I'm not going to touch on financial regulation. I have things that I could say about it, but I'll leave those for the panel session. Thank you very much.